You can click that button at any time and we'll absolutely get to your questions. But to make sure that we don't have any feedback during class, I like to keep all of our mics muted.
Awesome. Hey everybody, thanks for coming. How many people do we have? We have 11 people. Now, we have a lot more students than 11 students, so hopefully that we're going to get more attendance in our live sessions, but this is good for me to even have 11 people because the last couple of years I've been teaching, I've had like 2 or 3 students in each of my classes. So 11 is like, whoa, 11 people. But I know there's like 70 more of you somewhere out there. Please come to the live session. Anyway, I'm Chef Jeannie Stevenson. This will be my second time teaching on camera. I'm new to the school. I just started 3 weeks ago. I've been training, and this is my second class. So if it seems a little weird, like technically for me, screen sharing or just like moving things around on screen, I'm sorry, but I'll get used to it. I have been teaching for a long time, so I'm not new to being an instructor, but I am new to teaching on camera. So anyway, and everybody knows Chef Genevieve, right? You've worked together before.
I don't think I've worked with this group yet.
Oh, well, if you want to say anything about yourself, I'll talk about myself next if you want to talk about yourself at all.
So I am actually an Escoffier alumni. I graduated from the Escoffier pastry program, but I went to the Boulder campus. That was maybe 6-7 years ago, and I've been baking my heart out ever since. I love this school. I love this program. I think education is also something that I've always loved and was the other area of school that I went into. And so when I found a way that I could combine them both, I was super excited. I've been here working on in the online program for about a year now, a little over a year. So I'm here to help Chef Jeannie with those tech issues whenever I can. I'm here to help you guys with your assignments. Each week, I know you know this already, but I always give the spiel. I'm going to give you video feedback. I'm going to record your assignment, talk about everything that you did well, anything that's missing. And every week when you turn your assignment in on time, you get an extended period of time to make adjustments. So please, please listen to your feedback. Reach out to me whenever you have questions about it. If I said something that doesn't make sense to you or doesn't sit right with you, never hesitate to reach out to me. Send me a message. Let's talk about it. I am really excited to do this class with you guys. I think it's going to be super, super fun. Decorating is my wheelhouse. It is the thing that sent me to pastry school, the thing I was most excited to learn. So I am ready to do this with you guys. Chef Jeannie?
Awesome. Thanks for that introduction. And I'm going to talk about myself a little bit. That's not one of my favorite things to do, talking about myself, but I have been a pastry chef since 2002. I started school at Le Cordon Bleu, Pittsburgh, and I have been in pastry ever since. Incidentally, I didn't attend the pastry school. I attended culinary school, and during the 3rd month of my externship, I asked the chef of the establishment I was working for if I could spend some time in the bakery because I didn't get that much exposure in school. And he said yes, and I have been in pastry ever since. So that's kind of my story of how I got into baking. I just loved it so much. And right now, I don't want to ever touch another raw onion again, or meat, or I don't want to do anything unless I'm cooking for my family. But if I went back to work in a restaurant or something, it's got to be baking. There's no way I could. I think I would probably just be really depressed if I had to cook like savory foods. I like eating it, but I don't want to cook it professionally. But I've been teaching for the past 6 years. I started teaching at Le Cordon Bleu, Chicago. And that was a lot of fun because I got to meet Chef Tom Beckman. I'm sure you all know Chef Tom from Bread's class. And that's actually how I got introduced to this job, was through Chef Tom. I also worked for the City Colleges of Chicago in their Culinary Institute. And then here at Virginia College in North Carolina for the past few years. That is my teaching experience. So I'm not new to being an instructor, but I am new to teaching online. So like I said before, please forgive me if anything goes wrong or if I seem lost at some points. My experience is based in high volume bakery production and catering. That's what I'd done the most in the past. I've worked in bakeries and gourmet markets, lots of catering companies. We had a lot of restaurants that were attached to those types of businesses so that we would prepare the pastries and cakes to send to the restaurants. And I have worked in a couple of restaurants as a pastry chef as well, but most of my experience is in bake shops. I also worked at a five-star hotel in Colorado Springs, which was called the Broadmoor. That's where I did my externship at. And I know that you all are ready to go on your externship soon. And that's something I just wanted to talk about just for a minute while we have a minute was your externships. I wanted to mention that this is the opportunity to aim high, aim really, really high for your externship, because from my experience, if you aim high, the rest of your career will kind of follow in the footsteps of your externship. Now, not everybody has the opportunity to go to some place like the Broadmoor Hotel, which is a five-star, five-diamond resort, but this is the time to get your foot in the door. A lot of places don't want to hire somebody with no experience, but they will hire a temporary extern who has no experience. So if you can get into a really nice restaurant or a bakery or a hotel somewhere and just work for a few months, get that on your resume, you're much more likely to get high-end jobs afterwards than if you just started at a grocery store or something decorating cakes. But like I said, I mean, you have to do what you have to do. Not everybody has the opportunity to travel or to, go to big cities or whatever, but try to aim really, really high for your externship, if that makes sense. I was happy that I did because it seems to me like it's been smooth sailing for me ever since the Broadmoor Hotel. What about you, Chef Genevieve? Where did you do your externship at?
I did an externship at a much smaller bakery, but it was such valuable information because since then I've been able to help a lot of other small bakeries get their start from what I learned from this one. It was called Tea and Cakes. It was a husband and wife couple. The husband was a graphic designer, so he made t-shirts and cards, and then the wife was the pastry chef. And even though it was a smaller bakery, we were right on Pearl Street, which is the downtown of Boulder. So we had a ton of foot traffic every day. Something I learned in that bakery is that Valentine's Day is like a Super Bowl for pastry chefs. I forgot, maybe I never knew how many people order their loved ones baked goods and sweets on Valentine's Day. It of course makes sense now, but I got to work at 4 a.m. that day. We baked for 14 hours, and then my chef looked at me and said, "When you finish the dishes, you can go home." I learned so much. I worked so hard in that little bakery for 3 months. And again, learned valuable information that I use every single day. There's a bakery here where I live now that's been open for about 9 months, and they're getting ready to transition into a bigger space. And I'm there to help them figuring out storage, how to deal with their inventory, all of these things that I learned from that small mom and pop shop at my externship. I felt like I learned as much in my 3-month externship as I did at school, just jam packed into that tiny 3 months. So it was so much fun. It was hard work, but incredibly invaluable to my experience as a chef, and really pushed me to be better and take things to the next level. I think that was when I really had to face my fears of the business side of pastry as well. I think throughout school, I loved baking, I loved being in the kitchen, and I just got through the math side of it, the resume side of it, all that sort of stuff. And being in the kitchen, being in the business really forced me to learn those things and embrace that as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, small bakeries are where it's at, because in small bakeries, just like you said, you get to do a little bit of everything. Even if you were just hired as a pastry cook or a baker, you're going to get your feet wet in all the different areas, front of the house, back of the house, business. You're going to work with the clients, the customers real closely. So yeah, that's invaluable experience right there. And basically what I meant by aiming high for your externship is like, try not to go to work at Golden Corral, because you're going to be putting Cool Whip on top of frozen cobbler that came in from a factory somewhere. Go to work for a bakery. or a restaurant, someplace where you're actually going to be making product from scratch. You're not going to be taking things out of boxes. I know from the past, I've had a lot of students who did their externships at Panera because they waited until the last minute. But you're not making anything at Panera. You're taking frozen bread out of boxes. You're taking frozen Danish out of boxes. Unless, of course, you work at the Panera factory, and then you will be making things from scratch. But I just wanted to kind of touch on externships right off the top, because I know you're going on your externship soon. That's basically your next food class is your externship. And while we were introducing ourselves, that would kind of a good segue to talk about what we've done and how it's helped our careers. But anyway, that's a little bit about us. So I just want to, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to jump in with one tip for you guys since we're telling you to start looking. Look at pastry chefs in your area or businesses in your area and look at their food. Read reviews, look at pictures, look at research as much as you can, and find things that look exciting to you. That's how I found my externship. I walked into that bakery and I said, man, these are some of the most beautiful pastries I've ever seen. I want to learn from this chef. So that is how I encourage you guys to start searching for those externships, is find chefs and dishes and menus that you are inspired by and want to learn more about.
That's true. Very, very important. And you can just walk right into a place. You can walk right into the back of a restaurant and say, you know what, I want to work here. How can we make that happen? If they're not hiring, don't wait for a we're hiring advertisement. Just walk right in and tell them. I mean, what's the worst they can say is no, right? But and get yourself out there. So we are going to be making cakes for 6 weeks. I am really excited about making cakes. That's my favorite thing to do, and that's what I specialize in. Later in the live session, I'll show you some of the cakes that I've made over the last couple years. But who in this class wants to be a cake decorator? Jason, Sheila.
Okay, we've got at least a handful.
Okay. Do we have anybody who's got like a lot of experience decorating so far, or anybody who does cake decorating from home?
I do.
All right.
I do cake decorating also. I just made my son's 3rd birthday cake.
Cool. Well, we would love to see photos of your work in the class cafe, if possible. Is Chastity speaking? No? Okay. Anyway, so this is a really cool class for me to start teaching because it's cakes, and I know a lot about making cakes, and I love making cakes. It's my favorite thing to do. So anyway, really excited. But we're going to dive right in. I need to talk about the class page for a few minutes first. Even though this is your last class and everything, and you know everything about it, I still need to do that. That's part of the topics for week 1. So I'm going to screen share with you, and we're going to go right to the class page and get started chatting about some of the things that are on there. Okay, just give me a second. And okay, so you have your class page here. My information is right here on the side. My text number and phone number, they're different, so definitely take a look at that. Don't call me on the text number. You know, Chef Genevieve's information is down here. Feel free to reach out to us in any way that you can. You can send us messages on the class page, emails, phone calls, texts, whatever you want to do. My request is that you're very specific and thorough in your communication with us. Tell me your name, tell me what class you're in, and what is the issue you're having. Don't just be like, hey, chef, I'm having a problem. Because when I read that, I'm going to be like, who is this person? What class are they in? And what is their problem? So be as thorough as you can, and definitely introduce yourself, because I've got like 150 students, and you know, it's a little bit confusing at times. Make sure you're looking at some of this important information we have here. Okay, the last day of class is going to be on a Friday, not a Sunday. All of your work is going to be due that night, basically at midnight, Friday night. Week 6, we're not having a live session. The last live session is going to be on Wednesday, September 18th. But I do want to add that I am going to privately host some informal sessions throughout the week. Okay, I'm going to have one informal live session each week for each of my classes, and the informal session this week is going to be on Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. Central Time for this class, and I'll send out the link to that. So if anybody wants to jump in and talk with me or ask me questions, Chef Genevieve is not required to be there, but she can come if she wants to. But it's just something that I wanted to do for you guys so that I can spend a little bit of extra time with you. Even if there's only one person in the meeting, I'm still going to sit here and try to have that time with you. So if you want to come, please do. If you are going to come to that meeting, I do ask that you watch the live session first. If you didn't get a chance to attend the live session, at least watch it so you know what we did, because I'm not going to rehash all the information. I'm just going to kind of sit there and we're going to chat and talk about things. I'll answer your questions. Okay. So I just wanted to mention that, but I will send out the link to that very soon. Otherwise, all your assignments are due on Tuesday nights, discussions are due on Tuesday nights, even though we want you to have your initial post submitted by Saturday, okay? Makeup assignments, we have the due date here for them, as well as down at the bottom of the page where you can submit your assignments, Tuesday, September 24th at midnight, 11:59 p.m. So try to turn in all your stuff there. We are going to look at the syllabus in just a minute. Okay, what else do we have here? The class cafe, I want you to utilize that like it's a Facebook page. You guys can talk to each other. You can share pictures with each other regarding class and food topics. Don't just be in there chatting about, dogs and, your boyfriend and whatnot. But it's not a place to ask me questions. I will poke around in there a couple times a week, but if you have questions to ask me personally, you can go ahead and send me a message. But please do use it to communicate with each other, share pictures of your work, whatever you want to do. Okay, what else? Of course, there's a survey at the end of course survey, and that is extra credit, I think. I attached that as an extra credit assignment. So I'm going to scroll down to the extra credit too, because that's fun. Where is it? I have a end of course survey, and I also have a colorful buttercream drip cake, and this is what it would look like right here. So there's some parameters in there that explain, but if you want to make this cake for a little bit of extra credit, please do that, because this isn't one of our assignments to make the drip cake. And the drip cake has been very popular over the past few years. I think, what year is this now? 2019? I think in like 2016 or 2017, that was like pretty much the cake of the year. And I don't know.
It's not as easy as it seems, you guys. I have definitely ruined a few cakes trying to get that drip effect before I learned how to actually do it the correct way.
Yep. Does anybody follow cake trends? Like you're really up on all the cake pages and following the trends on Instagram? What's the trend happening right now? Jason, you're nodding your head. I don't know if you're dancing or agreeing with me, but do you know what the trend is right now?
I believe it's that crumb coat, that the outside doesn't look like it's completely done. You can still kind of see the cake still.
The naked cake, yeah, you're right. The naked cake is still very trendy, but the biggest trend right now, just happened a few months ago, is called the fault line cake.
Fault line. That's the one that it looks like it's inside a cave.
I'll find a picture.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. It looks like it's half iced on the top and the bottom, and then there's like stuff in the middle that's coming out. Like you could put fruit in there, you could put sprinkles in there. But anyway, if you want to be a cake decorator, you want to follow the trends. But that's one of the trendiest things right now. I put the drip cake as the extra credit because it's a little bit easier than the fault line cake. But anyway, if you want to do the extra credit, you can do that. So what else? Okay, let's talk about the syllabus real quick. You got your course objectives, and I'll say the long and short of this course is cake decorating. We're going to be baking cakes and making icing, putting the icing on the cake and making it look nice in a few different techniques. So take a look at the course objectives. You got your textbook. Now I'm sure by this point you all know how to use your textbook, but I just wanted to point out that if you click on the textbook under your weekly readings, it's going to pull up a page that takes you directly to the section that you need to read. But if you pull up the textbook at the top of the class page, it's going to take you to the front cover, and that's where you can navigate from if you go to this button on the side. So it just depends on how you want to use the textbook. But please do make sure that you're doing your reading for your homework. That way you can complete the knowledge checks. Those are a big part of your grade. I think it's 10% of your total grade. So make sure that you're doing the reading before you do the knowledge checks. Here is how your grades are broke down. You've got discussion forums. Those are due on Tuesday nights. Initial post should be done by Saturday. Lab assignments, all your cakes are going to be 60% of your grades. So make sure that you're submitting all your assignments, even if it's late. Even if it's late, we still want to see the cakes that you're making. Homework, I don't know what the homework
Those
is.
are the knowledge.
Okay.
Those are the knowledge.
I was going to say, I don't think we have homework besides reading and doing the little quizzes. And then, of course, your final exam. So you're all well aware of what all that stuff
that
is.
final exam is going to be made up of your knowledge quiz questions. I
Right.
want you to know that from week one. That's another reason that those knowledge quizzes are so important, because you will see those questions again on your final exam. So something that you're totally allowed to do is take pictures of your knowledge checks as you're taking them. So if a question comes up that stumps you, take a picture of it, and then by the time you get to your final exam, you'll have already referenced that question a few times. You'll have figured it out, understand it better. So keep that in mind every week, that your knowledge check, you'll see those questions again on your final.
I wanted to add regarding the knowledge checks, even though the reading and the knowledge checks are not really something that we're talking about a lot in class, that is information that is really, really good for you to know. Not only do you need to know how to decorate cakes, but you need to know kind of like the science behind cakes, and that information is what you're going to be finding in your reading, like the way that ingredients work together and kind of the functions of ingredients. Depending on where you work, that could be information that's important to the interview process. I've gone to a couple different job interviews where they actually ask me technical questions. In addition to wanting me to perform in the kitchen for my interview, the chef would sit down and ask me, what are the functions of flour? What are the functions of sugar? Name the 4 types of leaveners, things of that nature. So you want to read your book, even if it's not for class time, even if it's outside of class after you graduate. You want to read that book from cover to cover and be very, very abreast of the information that's inside, because that's gonna, I think that at some point, whether it's sooner or later, that information is going to come back to haunt you, and you're going to need to know. Now, I do have a lot of notes to share from my previous experience teaching that I can add to the page, just about technical things, which I can do. But anyway, long and short of it is do your reading. Don't just like try to guess your way through the knowledge checks. Okay. I'm going to go back to the syllabus. Attendance policy, everybody knows you need to come to class. You need to have an 80% attendance in order to pass the program. If you don't have 80% attendance, they place you on probation, and then you have to bring your attendance up. Otherwise, they remove you from the program. And if you're not here for 14 consecutive calendar days, you're also, again, removed from the program. So make sure that you're posting attendance. And there's various ways you can post attendance. You can come to live sessions. You can watch the live session archives. You can complete the knowledge checks. You can do the discussions. So make sure that you're posting attendance at least a couple times a week, a few times a week. Are there requirements on how many times they post attendance, Chef Genevieve?
There's not a requirement, but the more you guys are posting attendance, the better, and the less you'll hear from us, because trust me, you will hear from us. If a few days goes by and you haven't logged in, either Chef Jeannie or myself will definitely be sending you a text, maybe even giving you a call. So if you don't want us nagging you about logging into the class page, just hop in every now and then. And honestly, if you guys are doing your work the way that the weeks are structured, you won't have a problem posting attendance, because you can do your discussion forum first post by Saturday. If you post your assignment by Monday, then you come to class again on Wednesday. That's going to keep you at that sort of 2-3 day window that you're posting attendance regularly. So as long as you're keeping up with your work, you shouldn't have to worry about attendance. It'll happen.
Yes, okay. Last thing on the syllabus I wanted to mention would be the academic integrity. I know it's really easy to get pictures from Google from the cakes that we're trying to decorate, but please don't submit any Google photos. It's cake decorating is super easy to find every single assignment that we're making, like to the T. Don't do that, that's cheating. So anyway, don't do that. I'm going to go back to the class page, and we will talk about some of the assignments that we're going to be doing. Okay, so week 1, that's the week that we're in right now. This is the cake that we're going for. This is what your cake is supposed to look like, kind of flat iced, top border, bottom border.
Something about this cake, you guys, even though it looks pretty simple in essence, first of all, getting flat buttercream is not easy. But also, there are so many cake-focused bakeries where they are pushing cakes out by the minute. They're not just making one huge wedding cake a week. They're making 30 cakes a day and sending them out that look like that, flat iced, nicely piped edges. And I have seen chefs who can ice a cake like that in like less than 10 minutes. Once their initial crumb coat is on, they can do the rest of that so quickly, and that's money, you guys. So even though we're starting off a little simple, I want you guys to realize that the techniques here are super crucial and will absolutely help you make money. So we want to be detail oriented here.
That's right, detail-oriented and speed-oriented as well. I mean, unless you're working for yourself in your own home kitchen, when you're working in a bakery, you gotta go really fast. Now, a cake like the picture we just showed you, for a professional, a cake like that is gonna take you about 2 minutes. If I've got the cake crumb-coated, I'm gonna be able to get that flat icing on there with the piping in probably 2 minutes or less, maybe even quicker than that. And I really wish I could show you guys the way I ice a cake, because that's how I do it. Really fast. I could probably get through 30 of those cakes in an hour. And that's really what you need to be able to do as quickly as possible. Back to the class page. I just want to talk about the assignments, and then we're going to talk about the equipment that you need for these assignments, just in case you all have any questions about what you need for this class. The next cake that we're doing is a mirror glaze cake, and I've got a picture of that somewhere over here. Where is it? No, that's the recipe. Where is the picture? I thought I put a picture up. Okay, here's some photos of what your cake should look like. It's going to either have a colored glaze on it if you want to use mirror glaze, or it's going to be enrobed in a chocolate ganache. I gave you those 2 options, and on week 2 we'll talk about which one I think you should do, which is a better idea. But you know, anyway, these are just some examples of what your week 2 assignment is going to look like. Week 3 is a chiffon cake. I don't have a picture up there, but it's a chiffon cake with Swiss buttercream and American buttercream roses and writing. So it's going to kind of look like one of those birthday cakes that you find in the grocery store that's got all the icing roses on the side. This one, week 4, is going to be the storage of a cake. So we're going to ask you to bake a cake and to wrap it up and freeze it in preparation for your tiered your tiered cake, and you're also going to be making gum paste flowers. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about right now, I'm going to show you some photos. So anyway, your final project is going to be a tiered cake with gum paste flowers and rolled fondant. And then the last week is basically that project. It's a tiered cake. So let's talk about equipment that you're going to need for this class.
I have a question, Chef.
Yeah.
This is I don't know if it's shot in the dark here. I just went through a week 6, and is this basically like a recap of week 6? Because we just did this whole, everything that you just mentioned there. I just literally did all that.
You did it where? In your last class?
Week 6, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm a little bit confused. I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing this. I spoke with Chef Jen, and she told me to come to this class. It was on my schedule, but I literally just did all this exactly.
Okay, so it sounds like you've taken this class before then.
Possibly, but I was supposed to be turning in. Okay, I think I'm a little bit confused because I was supposed to be turning in some stuff. I was a little bit late for my last class, and I think the system just rebooted me in as a student that didn't pass the course, and I'm here and I'm not supposed to be here.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so after this live session is over, I'll notify Chef Ann, and we'll see if we can get you into the right class.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I'm gonna give her a call right now as well. Thank you.
Okay. So since I just very quickly discussed the projects, the assignments, we're going to talk quickly about the equipment that you might want to either purchase or borrow for the cakes. For your first cake, you're just going to need, a flat spatula, which probably came in your kit, an offset spatula or some sort of flat metal spatula, and a turntable. Cake turntable. I'm going to share my screen here again. Where is it? Turntable. Now you can get the cheap plastic ones at like Michael's and stuff. Like, they're kind of wobbly. If you have the money and you're going to be a professional cake decorator, you might just want to go ahead and invest in a metal turntable, like the Ateco one. They cost about $70 to $80, but you can even get them used and stuff. But those metal turntables last forever. But anyway, some sort of turning device that you can put your cake on to turn it around. Gum paste ball tools, they will be handy for when you're making your gum paste flowers. Now, if you go to the craft store, you're probably going to see the plastic ones. I don't know if anybody's purchased any tools just yet. Sorry, this is popping up all over the place. But I would suggest not getting the plastic ones because they have a seam where they're poured into the mold, the plastic, and the seam tends to rip the flowers. So if you can get the metal tool, see, you can even order these for like $3. Like this set right here, you get all 4 of these ball tools for $3. Now it might not come in 2 days, but you have a few weeks before we start this project. So this is why I'm talking about this now, is because you want to get these products, which may take a couple weeks to ship. Okay. And if you spend more money, this stuff really is going to last you. I had a metal ball tool that looked like this one here that I've had since 2006. And it cost me $20. Now I could have gotten, the $5 set at Michael's, the plastic ones, but they would have tore up my gum paste flowers and everything. So I would suggest that if you're going into this as a career, you want to actually spend the money on the equipment because it's going to give you a better product at the end. Does anybody have a question about what a gum paste ball tool is? What's a gum paste flower? If you're confused about what I mean by gum paste flower, let's just look. Gum paste flowers are kind of like sugar paste. It's almost like a rolled fondant or like a Play-Doh made out of sugar that we are going to make flowers out of for our final project. okay? Like that. Where is it?
And this is another moneymaker, you guys. For every gum paste flour that you add to a cake, you absolutely charge more. And you'll learn that when you start to make them. You'll realize how much time each individual flour can take and why you would charge for each individual flour on a cake. But some people really, really want those edible flours. You can absolutely charge them the big, big bucks for that. So it's beautiful, it's fun to learn, but it's yet another serious moneymaker in the cake world.
That is true. If you're really good at making gum paste flowers, you could charge upwards of $40 for one flower because it takes a lot of time to do. If a bride wants a dozen roses on her cake, you might charge her an extra $500 just for the flowers alone. And you can buy them pre-made too. They come in boxes, the commercially made gum paste flowers. But if you actually know how to make them by hand, it can add a lot of financial value to your cakes and whatever else you're putting them on. So we got gum paste ball tools. I need to move this thing out of the way. Okay. Floral wire. Floral wire is something that you're going to need to make your gum paste flowers. And you can also get this at the craft store. And you want to get the floral wire that's covered in cloth. It's got either a green or a white cloth covering. You don't want to get this kind of wire right here that's all wrapped up in a spool because it's not going to be straight, and you really want straight wire. And make sure you're getting the cloth covered wire. The one that's not cloth covered, your gum paste is just going to slide right off of it. See, because you're going to be gluing it to the wire basically, and it's not going to glue to like a straight piece of wire that's either made out of metal or plastic. Okay, any questions about this stuff, you can ask me or you can message me later too. Coloring, you're going to want some sort of food coloring for your gum paste flowers as well, and maybe even your cakes. So you can get the gel colors, gel food coloring. Don't get liquid food coloring because it's very liquidy and it's going to impart a lot of moisture into whatever it is that you're making, and especially for rolled fondant and gum paste, it's not good to use. So you want to get the gels, and they come in little bottles.
And a little goes a long way. So it seems a little bit more expensive. Sometimes, like at Michael's and Hobby Lobby, they're like $2 to $3 for one color, but you only need the smallest drop of gel color typically to color your icing. So a little, I mean, I have those size bottles that have lasted me a year because you need so little of it. So even though it's a little more expensive than your typical liquid food coloring, it lasts for a very, very long time. And a little bit packs a big punch.
That's very true. You don't have to go out and spend hundreds of dollars on food coloring because, especially for our flowers and things of that nature, you're just going to be adding a drop. You're not going to be using like a whole bottle of food coloring. Now, I will say that if you wanted to make a cake that had a super saturated color of fondant on it, like you wanted to make a bright red colored fondant cake, you can actually buy your fondant red already, because the amount of food coloring that it's going to take to get your rolled fondant to turn bright red, that might take a whole bottle. It might even take 2 bottles. So that's why they make rolled fondant in different colors. But we're going to talk a lot more about that later. But if you are buying food coloring, just make sure that you're buying the gel colors and not the liquid colors.
Somebody asked about powder color down in the chat, which is also can be effective, but powder can alter the consistency of your icing. So for example, if you're trying to get black icing, so you're using charcoal powder, which is actually what I use because it turns your mouth less black than black gel coloring, you have to adjust your icing recipe to make up for the amount of dried product that you're adding.
Now I want to comment on charcoal in that it is very trendy right now. It's been trendy for the last few years to put in food, and especially to make with desserts and stuff. But one thing about charcoal you have to keep in mind is that it does absorb medications in the body. That's one of the reasons they started using it medically. It was because you can take it, like let's say you drank too much alcohol or somebody swallowed a bunch of pills or something, they send them to the hospital and they put charcoal in their stomach to absorb the toxins. And that's what it does when it goes in your body, is it absorbs medications. that is something that you need to tell your customers about if you're serving them products with activated charcoal, is that it could cause their medications to not work. Now, you might be thinking you have to eat a lot of activated charcoal in order for it to absorb your medicine, but if you eat one slice of cake that's covered in black frosting, that's enough to cause the medications you took for the day to not function. Maybe you take more medicine tomorrow, even like birth control pills, it will absorb it out of your system. And like I said, although it is trendy right now, it's a little bit controversial because of the implications that it could have. However, it does work really well if you're trying to make black frosting and black fondant. I'm going to go back to my screen share and show you the non-toxic pastels that you can also use for coloring your gum paste flowers. Now these, you're not going to put into your gum paste, you're just going to shave some off. Like if you have a little tea strainer, you're going to, I have a tea strainer picture right here. You're just going to get one of these little tea strainers or something like that, and then you're going to put this chalk and kind of like rub it into the tea strainer to make a dust. And that's a real cheap way of making your own petal dust if you want to use petal dust for your gum paste flowers. But we're going to talk a lot more about these products in a couple of weeks when we get to that product, that project. But I just wanted to start now so you can kind of be thinking about things that you can use. And I know your brains are probably going like a million miles an hour right now thinking about your final project, but we can get to that. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of show you a few things. Are there any questions about that before I jump into our week 1 project? Is everybody like really, really, really excited about that tiered cake?
I am.
Cool. Me too. Awesome. And I can't wait to see pictures of all your work too. So let's start about talking about this week. Okay, your project is to make a yellow butter cake with Italian buttercream icing. It's going to be flat iced like the picture I showed you, and it's going to have a top and bottom border. So I'm going to bring that picture back up again. Most of what I'm doing here is screen sharing. I'm sorry if you don't like that, but I have to show you a lot of things, so please bear with me. Okay, again, I'm going to show you the picture. It's right here. We're talking about flat icing. We're not using a comb or any sort of texturizers on the side of icing. We're talking about a top and bottom border. So that's what these are right here, a top pipe border and a bottom border. This is called a shell border, by the way, and I do have a little video to play for you on how those things are achieved. Okay, so that's what your cake's gonna look like. You have 2 recipes here. You've got one for yellow butter cake and another one for Italian buttercream.
And someone had asked earlier in the chat if we were going to focus on the actual bake caking techniques, but that's actually something you guys have learned in school already. So if you read through that yellow cake recipe, you'll recognize it as the creaming method. You start by creaming your fat and sugar together, slowly adding your eggs and vanilla, and then adding your dry ingredients. So looking through your recipes, you will definitely see those techniques that you've already learned here at school. But we're always here to help you, of course, if you have any questions.
Right. That's right. And we're going to require for your project that you're going to show us a slice of cake too. Down here at the bottom, you will see step 18, a slice of cake on a plate to show. So you do want to make sure that you're baking your cake properly. And we're going to real quickly talk about the creaming method and how to make Italian buttercream. But I think that those are important parts of your project. And of course, the focus is going to be putting the icing on the cake and doing the piping. So yeah, but we do want to focus on making it an edible cake too, nice and fluffy and everything, and utilizing that technique properly.
While you're on that page, Chef Jeannie,
oh, sorry.
I want you guys to know as a class that as an evaluator, one of the things I'm really picky about is that you have every single required photo. That's one of the things about being in this online program, is that for me to be able to give you accurate feedback that's actually going to help you improve, I need to be able to see your production, all of your steps along the way. So please, please, please take a look at your required photos before you start your work. Maybe even print them out or write them down and have them in your kitchen while you're working. That way you don't miss any steps, because I'm a stickler about those required photos.
So what do you mean by number 7 on that question, on that picture?
Number 7 said scaled batter in prepared pan. That's like right before you bake it. You're going to show us a pan full of your batter.
Oh, I don't have to scale it. Like, I don't have to put it in the scale.
No,
Right?
scaling is another way of saying that you measured it. Like, professionally speaking, we're not going to be making 1 cake, we're going to be making 40 cakes. So I'm going to take my giant bowl of cake batter and I'm going to scale a certain amount into each pan.
Okay.
So that they're all equal.
And I asked earlier, Chef Gina answered, but at the same time didn't. For the buttercream, we have to do all white, or we can put any color?
You can make it any color you like. I would focus on, just like I said, focus on the techniques, and try not to saturate your icing with food coloring, because Italian buttercream is kind of fragile on its own. It's a softer icing. So if you start putting a whole bunch of food coloring in there, it's really going to alter the texture of your icing and it's going to be way too soft. So if you just want to put a couple drops in there, that'll be okay, but don't be like, oh, I'm going to make this like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cake and green and black and all that kind of stuff. So just a couple drops will be fine. But yeah, you can make it any color you want.
And how big, like the recipe look big? Like how big is it? Like how many cakes?
Let's take a look.
A little big.
Yeah, let me take a look here. The recipe, I believe it makes an 8-inch pan or a 10-inch pan.
For the cake, but for the buttercream.
Oh, the buttercream is going to be enough to cover your cake, and it's going to be actually a little bit more than you need, because as a beginner cake decorator, you're going to need more than less. You're going to want more buttercream to work with.
And remember, you have to fill your layer. In between your layers, you're going to put buttercream, then a crumb coat around your cake, and then finally the exterior coat and the piping. So
But if I have extra buttercream, how good is good? How long is good in my fridge?
The buttercream, you really don't have to chill it. If you're going to be storing this cake for a long, long time, you can chill it, but the buttercream is pretty shelf stable because of all the sugar that's in there.
Oh, okay. For how long is good for?
At room temperature, given that your kitchen is like a reasonable temperature of maybe somewhere between like 60 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit, it should last for a week.
Oh, okay.
But there is butter in there, so it's going to become rancid. But generally speaking, like professionally speaking, we don't put our buttercream in the refrigerator. Like if I mix up a bowl of buttercream today, I'm not going to put it in the refrigerator to use it tomorrow. I'm going to leave it out for a few days, and I'm going to use it up in a few days. If I had a whole bunch extra, you could even freeze it. But in my opinion, the only time this buttercream needs to go in the refrigerator is if you're not going to use it for a long, long time, or if it's on your cake and you want to keep your cake cold. But you don't have to keep your cake cold either. The only time you really have to keep this cake cold is when you put your icing on it to crumb coat it so it gets hard before you put your final coat on there. But
okay, so what do you recommend to do? The cake first and then buttercream, or it doesn't matter?
Let's say your assignment is due on Tuesday night and you're gonna like wait till the last minute, which you shouldn't do, but let's just say you are. You should make the icing on Sunday, because it can sit out for a few days, or you could put it in the cooler if you want to. And you should bake your cake no later than Monday. You should bake your cake and get it wrapped up. And you can leave the cake at room temperature, but the cake has to cool down completely before you start cutting it and filling it with icing. So I would say the cake you need to make a day before you decorate it. So you could make the icing on Sunday, you could make the cake on Monday, and then fill the cake and decorate it on Tuesday.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This could just be personal preference. I do chill my cake before I try and ice it because I'm not as skilled as Chef Jeannie yet. She's got really masterful hands and I'm a little bit more clumsy. So when I chill my cakes or my layers, they're a little firmer, which makes it a little bit easier for me, who's not quite as skilled at cake constructing, to put those layers together. So that's also something that you can consider. And for your icing, when you let it sit, sometimes it can like set up a little bit. So you'd always want to give it a really good stir again before using after it's rested.
That's a very good point. With both Italian buttercream and Swiss buttercream, it's going to settle and it's going to lose some of its fluffiness. So if you make the icing on Sunday and you decorate your cake on Tuesday, you're going to want to put your icing back in the mixer and fluff it up, whisk it for a couple minutes and get some of that fluffiness back into it, because it's a little bit different than American buttercream. American buttercream is just like fat and powdered sugar and it holds a lot of air bubbles, but Swiss buttercream and Italian buttercream, they're going to settle out a little bit. Now, if you do chill your buttercreams, if you're one of these people who makes the icing and just has to put it in the cooler for whatever reason because you feel like, you know, the world's going to end if you don't, you need to let it come up to room temperature. Let's say you've got a bowl full of icing. You've got to let it come up to room temperature and then re-whip it before you use it. If you put it in the mixer cold and you try to whip it up, not only is it going to probably hurt your mixer, but the icing itself is going to break. And when it comes up to room temperature, it's going to look curdled. It's going to look like soupy, chunky frosting. So let the icing come up to room temperature and then re-whip it. But if you're storing it at room temperature, then you don't need to let it come to room temperature because it'll already be room temperature. Now, the only time you really need to chill this frosting is if your kitchen is really hot. Like you live in the 7th layer of hell or something, and it's like 95 degrees in your kitchen, which
I live in the high desert in California.
yeah, I was going to say I live in North Carolina right now. It's like 100 degrees outside, so I need to run my AC a lot. But if your house is really hot, don't leave this icing out. And if you put it on your cake, don't leave the cake out. Put it in the fridge because you're going to come back to a soupy, liquidy mess. But I want to look at the videos real quick and I'm just going to real quickly, we're probably going to go over our time here by 10 minutes or so. So if you have to leave, that's fine. Just watch the archive. But I want to walk you through these recipes before we leave. Okay.
I have a real fast question.
Okay.
Is the cardboard on the bottom of the cake required?
You've got to have something under your cake, and it really needs to be something flat. Like a dinner plate is probably not the best idea because as you start putting the icing on your cake, you're not going to want that rim of the plate to be inhibiting your ability to use your spatula. So whatever you put under your cake, it's got to be flat.
So I have one of those cake pans that the bottom pops out of. Is that okay to use?
Yeah, I would say it is, just as long as it's a little bit bigger than the actual cake itself. Because if your board is like flush with the sides of your cake, you're going to find it kind of difficult to get the icing on there without messing up everything that the cake is sitting on, like the turntable. Now, I myself like to work really clean, and when I start getting icing all over my table and my turntable, it's just getting everywhere, that's not a good practice.
Okay.
So just a general rule, your cake board should be a little bit bigger than your cake. Like if you're making a 6-inch round cake, you should probably get an 8-inch device to put underneath of it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
At Walmart, they sell cake boards, Wilton cake boards, and you can get a multi-pack where it comes with like 5 6-inch cake boards, 5 8-inch, 5 10-inch, and it's like $10 or something. So they have that at most Walmarts.
Right. Okay, I'm going to open up a video. We're going to look at the cake or whatever. Yeah, we're going to look at the cake mixing. See if I can figure out how to do this. Okay. Woohoo, I did it. All right, so I'm going to play the video for you. Can anybody tell me real quick before I start what the steps of the creaming method are?
You gotta whip your butter and your sugar together, but your butter has to be at room temperature, but not over soft.
Right, very good. You've got to start by whipping the fat and the sugar together using room temperature ingredients. Obviously, your sugar is not going to be cold, but the butter needs to be at room temperature. And when we're speaking of room temperature, we're talking about the ideal room temperature of about, I don't know, say 65 to 72 degrees. The butter needs to be such that, like, you could put it in your hands and you could, like, mold it and stuff and move it around without it squishing everywhere. If it's too soft, pop it back in the refrigerator for a little while. But it needs to be like kind of soft and room temperature, but not like really squishy. So you're going to start by whipping the butter and the sugar, and then what? This is probably the most important.
Eggs one at a time.
Eggs. Room temperature eggs, and you're going to add your eggs slowly. Now, you don't need to necessarily add them one at a time. Like if you wanted to put all the eggs in a bowl and whisk them together, you would slowly pour the beaten eggs in. You don't have to like crack an egg and add it one at a time. You could add beaten eggs, but you want to add room temperature eggs slowly. Now, what's the reason for going slow?
So it doesn't curdle. The fat won't absorb it, or something with it curdling. I can't remember exactly what it is.
Right. I mean, eggs are basically liquid. So if you add them all at once to fat, fat and liquid don't mix together. So if you add it too fast, you're going to have a bowl full of chunks of butter floating around in a pool of eggs.
Also, what temperature should your eggs be? If you're putting cold eggs into a bowl of room temperature creamed butter, it's going to make your butter start to harden back up, and you're going to see a similar sort of chunky consistency. So having room temperature eggs is also important.
Yep. If you forgot to leave your eggs out on the counter for a little while to come up to temperature, you could, if your eggs are still in their shells, you could pop the whole eggs in the shell into a bowl of lukewarm water, not hot water, because then you're going to end up cooking your eggs, but you can pop the shell eggs into a bowl of warm water just to kind of bring them up to temperature while they're in their shell. And if you brought them out of the refrigerator and you cracked them and you got a bowl full of cold eggs and you need to make your cake right now, you can't wait, but you need to bring those eggs up to temperature, place that bowl over another bowl of warm water and kind of whisk them a little bit in a bowl to bring them up. But you definitely use all your ingredients should be room temperature, everything. There's liquid at the end, there's milk at the end of this recipe, so you're going to want that to be at room temperature too. So you add your eggs slowly, and then what? And then what? You got flour.
You gotta alternate your wet and your dry ingredients. You can't put it all together at one time, or you're gonna have a mess.
Right. That's very important, the alternating of the wet and dry ingredients. So let's say you have a pound of flour, separate it into 3 parts. Let's say you have a pound of milk, separate it into 2 parts, and then you would add your first part of the flour, mix it up a little bit, scrape the bowl, add the first part of your milk, mix it up a bit, scrape the bowl, and keep doing that, alternating back and forth until your flour and your liquid are absorbed. Scraping the bowl often, okay, and adding the liquid slowly. Even though you split your liquid into 2 or 3 parts, you still have to add it slowly like the eggs, otherwise you're going to end up with a lumpy batter. Okay, so I'm going to play the video. I might fast forward through the video. Play the video. Maybe I won't fast forward through it. There it goes. Okay, there's all your ingredients. There they are again. Sugar. Sorry, technical difficulties.
And these videos are available to you under your research materials for this week as well, so you're able to watch this anytime.
sugar, room temperature butter. Mix it up. Remember to use the paddle attachment, not the whisk attachment. Paddle attachment. You want to cream it on medium speed. Don't forget to scrape your bowl.
I can't emphasize enough the importance of scraping.
While that's creaming, you can go ahead and sift your ingredients. Now, why would we be sifting our ingredients?
So you won't have any lumps in your flour, your salt, your baking soda, baking powder won't have lumps in it. Because if you just dump it in there, then it's gonna have all kinds of lumps and all kinds of bumps and everything else.
That's right. You want to sift it to get all the lumps out, and sometimes there might even be some kind of physical contaminant in there, like a little piece of paper from the bag of flour or something, or you name it. I've got a million stories about physical contaminants, but anyway, sift your dry ingredients. It's also a good idea to sift your sugar too, just to make sure that there's no like giant lumps of sugar. So you want to cream it until it's light and fluffy. Scrape the bowl. Next step, we're going to slowly incorporate the eggs. If you have anything in your cake like food coloring, you could also add it with the eggs, or you could add it with the liquid in the liquid section. Either way. Obviously, they're making a red velvet cake here, which you can do. You don't have to make a yellow butter cake. You just need to make some kind of creaming method cake.
Rachel just asked that, and I told her no. So awesome, guys. You can make more flavors than just the yellow cake. I would like to see a creaming method cake, though. Stick to the creaming method.
Yeah, I was going to say I would say yes, because we want to see the technique. It doesn't really matter to me if you make a yellow butter cake or if you make a chocolate cake, because it's pretty much the same as a yellow butter cake. It's just got some cocoa in it. I don't care if you make red velvet, because that's going to have a little bit of, you know, red coloring and some cocoa in there. But as long as you're doing a creaming method cake, don't give us pictures of like a one-stage method cake where you're adding dry ingredients to wet ingredients, including liquid fat. Just got to be some sort of creaming method cake. So flour. They just added a little bit of liquid, and they're just going to go back and forth with that. And don't forget to scrape your bowl, because as you can see, you know, you get stuff stuck to the side there, and you want that to all mix into the batter together. Okay. So if you have lumps in your cake batter, a lot of students ask me this question. They're like, Chef, they bring me a bowl of cake batter. Chef, I've got lumps. The first thing I say is, okay, well, you did it wrong. Oh, well, if you don't want to throw it out, you could pass it through a strainer, but I just want to put this out there. That's not the correct technique. Straining your cake batter is not like, yay, you did it right. If you've got lumps in your cake batter, it's because you did not do the steps correctly. You didn't cream it right. But you know, you don't want to throw out a bunch of batter. So just make sure that you're scraping your bowl often. You're adding room temperature ingredients. You're adding the liquid slowly, the egg slowly, the milk slowly, whatever it is that you're doing, okay? Any questions about the creaming method cake? And then I'm going to go into Italian buttercream real fast. I have a beater with a scraper on it. They cream better together, yes. Scraper, a mixer with a scraper built in is awesome. I need one of those. You can make red velvet, yeah. Any sort of creaming method cake will do. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and move into Italian buttercream, and just before we look at the video, I want to tell you that you need to have a bowl of ice water on your counter when you're making this, because you're gonna be cooking sugar to 240 degrees, and if you get that on yourself, you have to immediately put your skin wherever you got the sugar into ice water so you don't get a really, really bad burn. You're going to get a burn anyway, but the ice water will stop the sugar from melting your skin off. Okay? All right. So, Italian buttercream. Italian buttercream is based on a Italian meringue. So I know that you have made meringue in your other class at some point. So let's look at the recipe real quick. We've got sugar, water, and egg whites. That is where we're going to be making our meringue. So basically what you're doing is you're cooking the sugar and the water to 240 degrees, softball stage. The recipe says 242, but anywhere between 240 and 245 is fine. Just don't go over 245. You cannot overcook your sugar and then cool it down. That won't work. If you take it to like firm ball stage or hard ball stage or hard crack stage, it's not going to work out. Okay, you've got to cook it to the proper temperature. While you're cooking your sugar and your water together, you want to put the egg whites in your mixer and start mixing it on low to medium speed until it gets to soft peaks. And then once it reaches soft peaks, you're going to turn the mixer down to low and continue to mix it while your sugar is cooking. Now, in your assignment, you need to take pictures of this process. Have everything ready to go, have your camera ready to go, because as soon as that sugar and water reaches 240 to 245, you need to then immediately pour it into your mixer of egg whites. Don't wait. You can't like sit it on the stove while you're like taking pictures and stuff.
Oh, yes.
You need to.
You are ruining my, go sit on the naughty couch right now, both of you.
I don't want to.
I got it.
I don't want to sit on the naughty couch. Okay, so anyway, let's watch the video because it'll make more sense. It'll make more sense. Professional tip, though, when you're making Italian buttercream, add a little bit of corn syrup to your sugar and water mixture. Let's say to that particular recipe, you can add like 1 to 2 tablespoons of corn syrup, and that'll help prevent it from crystallizing. Even though it's not in the recipe, go ahead and dump just a little bit of corn syrup in there, and that'll help prevent crystallization. So I'll play the video now. This video, you need to have all your mise en place together. You need to be ready to go. There is no waiting with this recipe. Why? Okay. So the butter needs to be cut up into chunks and soft. There we go. We pour our sugar and our water into the saucepan, and they're going to begin cooking it. While they're cooking it, they're going to start mixing the egg whites up to soft peaks. So that's going to happen while you're cooking your sugar. Once you get soft peaks, like I said before, turn the mixer down to low and continue. They didn't do this in the video, but can just continue mixing it on low speed. That's going to help your egg whites stay fluffy and not kind of like start falling apart. She's testing her sugar with her fingers, which I don't recommend for beginners to do. You're going to want to use a thermometer, use like a digital thermometer or something. And if you don't know what kind of digital thermometer to get, I can send you a link to like a photo of some some kind of thermometer that's appropriate. Once the sugar reaches 240-ish degrees, 240 to 245, you will then immediately turn the mixer up to medium-high speed. You will take the sugar off the stove and pour it into the mixer. You need to pour it down the side of the bowl. Do not pour it onto the whisk while the whisk is moving, because it's going to spray back up into your face and you're going to get hot sugar all over your face. So that's very important to pour the hot sugar down the side of the bowl. Then you're going to mix it on high speed until the meringue has cooled off, and you can test it by touching the bottom of the bowl with your hand. If it's still super hot, keep mixing it. Then you have your flavoring, your vanilla flavoring, and your butter. She went ahead and added the vanilla first, then you can add the butter. You could even add the vanilla last if you want to. But most importantly here, you need to make sure that the meringue is not too hot. So test it by touching the bottom of the bowl with your hand. It should just be at room temperature. It's probably going to take you 7 to 10 minutes to mix it in your mixer until it's the right temperature. Then you can add your butter. You don't have to add the butter this slow, but don't just throw it in there all at once. I would say if that was me, I would have added that butter in about like 4 or 5 handfuls, not like chunk by chunk, but I've made it a million times. So mix it up until it's nice and light and fluffy. Stop the mixer, scrape it, mix it, scrape it, mix it, scrape it, and then it's going to be nice and light and fluffy. And it should not be dripping off your whisk. When you take the whisk out of the bowl, it should stay. It should be like icing. It should stay on your whisk. You should not be like seeing it drip off your whisk. Now, if it drips off your whisk, you're in trouble, because one of three things could have happened. Maybe you didn't mix it long enough and you just need to give it another few minutes to mix up to get those air bubbles incorporated. Maybe it looks like chunky buttercream soup, in which case it's either that your butter got too hot in there and the butter melted, or the butter was too cold when you added it. So if it feels like it's like the butter melted and it's really liquidy, you can sit your bowl over some cool water with some ice cubes in it for a couple minutes and then re-whip it, and repeat that process a few times just to kind of re-chill your butter and re-whip it that way. Now, alternatively, if your butter was too cold when you added it to the mixer, you're going to have chunks of like unmelted butter in your buttercream. Then you have to take your bowl off and set it over some warm water for a few seconds, and then re-whip it and set it over warm water for a few seconds and re-whip it. Unless you happen to have a torch, like a butane torch for making creme brulee and stuff, you can actually torch your bowl while you're mixing it up. That's how I do it. Questions?
Can you over mix it?
Not really. I mean, if you happen to like forget about it and walk away for 15 minutes and it's like really like fluffy and there's a lot of bubbles in it, you could actually take the whisk out and put the paddle attachment in there and mix it on medium speed, and the paddle attachment will help even out some of those big bubbles.
That's what you can mix it too quickly, if that makes so. If you pour your meringue in and then you just turn it to high and walk away, it's going to add air really, really fast, and it's not going to be the same like beautifully smooth consistency that you'd see if you do it at that slightly slower speed.
How long does it take from when you add the syrup and when you the butter? Like how long does it take? Like let's see if I finish adding all my butter. How long should I do it?
It's probably going to take, if you mix it on high speed, it's probably going to take about 3 to 4 minutes. But that's also depending on what kind of mixer you have. If you have a handheld mixer, like one of the ones, with the 2 beaters, it's going to take longer. If you've got a professional like KitchenAid, like in the video, it's going to take less time.
Okay.
Evangelina is asking in the chat if they can try chocolate Italian buttercream.
Chocolate Italian buttercream, you can do that. I would say there's two ways to make chocolate Italian buttercream. You can either add cocoa powder at the end of the mixing process, like you just made your Italian buttercream like they did in the video, and then you just dump some cocoa powder in there and mix it up until it's smooth. Or you can add cooled melted chocolate or cooled chocolate ganache, but do not add warm chocolate or chocolate ganache to it because it's just going to make your icing like soupy. So if you melt some chocolate and cool it down to a little bit less than room temperature, or make some ganache, like a basic 50-50 ganache, like 50% chocolate and 50% cream, cool it down to a little bit less than room temperature so it's actually like spoonable and spreadable, and then you can add it at the end of the process and whip it up and get your chocolate buttercream.
Perfect.
So we went over time, but if anybody else has any questions, we could get to those real quick, or we can wrap it up. And
you can always message us.
Yep.
Send us a message every week in your feedback. I'll leave you guys my phone number, texting number, email, because I want you to reach out whenever you have questions.
For the cake, we're doing 3 or we're doing 4 layers?
you can make the cake 3 or 4 layers if you want to. It's trendier to make cakes taller right now. So if you actually had a 6-inch cake pan or a couple of 6-inch cake pans, you could bake the batter in a smaller cake pan. That way you have more and you can make it. But I don't think that particular recipe is going to give you 4 layers if you make like a larger round cake. But I will tell you that if you're baking, whatever pan you're baking in, you never want to fill the pans up more than 3/4 of the way up the pans. So like, let's say you said, okay, I want to turn this recipe into a 6-inch cake. Don't just dump all that batter into a 6-inch cake pan, because it's going to fill it all the way to the top. Then it's going to take forever to bake. It's going to overflow, and you're going to end up with cake all over your oven, and you're going to end up with like a cake ball, soft goopy texture. So whatever pans you're using, if the pan's this tall, don't fill the batter more than like 3/4 of the way up the pan. And don't forget to spray your pans with spray or rub them lightly with butter, and put some parchment paper in the bottom. And the parchment paper needs to be in the bottom of the pan. It should not come up the sides of the pan. It needs to fit flush into the bottom of the pan.
So we're making a cake and then we're gonna cut the cakes in layers. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, after the cake comes out of the oven, if you have a cake that's maybe like 2 or 3 inches tall, you're gonna split it. And I did include a video in week 1 that you can watch to split a cake, and we can talk more about that in the other session if you want to come to that. But if your cake ends up being tall, you can split it. But if you end up having like really short cakes, like let's say you split this batter among like 3 different pans, you're gonna have 3 layers, and then you don't need to split them, but you will need to cut the dome off because the cakes are gonna have a little bit of a hump to them. You're going to want to slice the dome off. And I personally like to bake my cakes in a few different pans. That way it takes less time to bake it, and I'm using less energy in my house.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, and I will see you tomorrow because I want to be on the class tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. Anybody else? Okay, well, if there's no other questions right now, we're going to cut this, and feel free to message us or whatever, you know, what you want to do. Call me, text me, Chef Genevieve, whatever you need to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day. Bye-bye.